We have seen various kinds of walls so far in this course. Some of them were generic, showing only one layer of material. Some were brick, some had steel studs and drywall. Would you be surprised to learn that all of these walls belong to the same family? Walls are a system family in Revit, and all the walls mentioned here are part of the basic wall system family. System families are built into the system. Most major building components are actually system families, including walls, floors, roofs, and stairs, to name a few. This means that we cannot change any of the parameters of the family itself. We cannot rename it, we can't delete it, we can't add a new one. However, we can manipulate the family types of any system family. So when we see one wall made out of brick and another made out of concrete, they both belong to the basic wall family, but they are two different types. So in this movie, we'll explore how we can make our own type of basic wall. So I'm in our office building project. We're looking at the toilet rooms for our office building structure, and we have this really thin little basic wall here, interior 4 7/8 inch partition, which matches all the others, and that's not really appropriate for the wet wall between all the plumbing fixtures. So let's go ahead and select this wall, and over here on the Properties palette, we're going to choose Edit Type. And if I were to go and actually start making modifications, it'd be a little dangerous because I'd actually be editing the interior 4 7/8 inch partition type, and that would apply everywhere throughout the project. So that's not what I want to do. So the first step is I need to click Duplicate and give my new wall type a different name. So I'm going to just call this Plumbing Wall. Now, it's just an exact copy of the wall that I started with, so now all I have to do is make whatever modifications are necessary to turn this thin little stud wall into a more substantial plumbing wall. And we're going to do that right here with the Edit Structure button. And we have been in here before, just sort of briefly. We're going to spend a little bit more time in here now doing a little bit more work. We're going to actually make some modifications and add a few components. So just to recap a few things we have already discussed in previous movies, the core boundary is set out by these two gray bars here. You can't change these, they're built in. You can, however, change what occurs above the core, below the core, or inside the core. So in this case, we can see we have a structural component inside the core that uses a metal stud layer material, and it's set at 3 5/8 of an inch. We have a finish on either side. Both of them are gypsum wallboard, and they're both 5/8 of an inch. So what we're going to do is actually select the structural element here. These are actually referred to as layers. So we're going to select the structural layer, and we're going to click Insert. We're inserting another structural layer right above the first one. And what I want to do is basically make it match all the settings of the first ones. So I'm going to select the thickness of the one below it and do Control-C on my keyboard. That's copy. And then click over here and do Control-V on my keyboard to paste it. And then I want to also change the material of that layer to match the one below. So you see when I click in here for the material, I get this small little browse button. I'll go ahead and click on that. And scroll down here, and we're going to find metal stud layer. Again, we're just going to pick off the list. You can see here there's quite a long list of materials that are part of the template that we started this project with. You could choose any of those. I'm going to choose the metal stud layer. So that takes care of that. However, I don't want these two stud layers to be right up against each other. Let me move this box over slightly, and I'm going to click right here on the preview button, and that's actually going to show me in real time what we've been modifying. So you can see that this was the original stud layer where my mouse is here, and the new one is right up against it here, and they've got this little seam in between. So I'm going to select the first one, and I'm going to click Insert again. And this is going to make a third layer inside the core. And I'm going to change its material to a miscellaneous air layer, air space. So this is going to be the space where the cavity will actually be for the plumbing. I'm going to go ahead and click OK on that. Up here, my total wall thickness is currently 8.5 inches. I can either decide how big I want the airspace to be, or I could decide how big I want the total wall to be and kind of do the math and work backwards. I'm feeling like I just want to put in a number here right now. So I'm going to go ahead and put in 6 inches for that. That means my total wall is, 1 foot 2.5. Well, maybe I'll just even that off at 14 inches. So I'll go ahead and change this to 5.5 inches. And that reduces it a little. And you see it add here in real time in the preview. So I now have a stud here, I have an airspace here for plumbing, and then another stud right here. Now I don't want this to be considered a structural layer because the air isn't holding anything up. If I click right here, you can see there's actually a bunch of functions available on this list. Now these are built in. You and I can't add any functions to the list, so we can just choose from the ones off the list. So a thermal air layer is what makes a little bit more sense in this case for the function. I don't need to do anything for the finishes, except perhaps if you wanted to add another layer of drywall or some acoustical barriers or things like that. But in this case, I'm going to keep this plumbing wall fairly simple, and that's all I really need to do. I'm going to click OK. And I'll click OK again. And you'll see after a moment, the thickness of that wall will change. And all the plumbing fixtures that were attached to the wall adjust accordingly. And if I come down here and I change from coarse to medium detail, it will display those components that I built inside the wall. That's a real simple example, but that gives you the idea of all you need to do if you want to create your own basic wall type.